good to see you, Steph. I mean, the last
Well,
time I talked to you was pre-holiday, I think, and you were getting ready to do some incredible things in your life. Love your
thank you.
bio.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here, and it was awesome to meet you back in the fall. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
I know. Thank you for coming. This is a a very important piece to the puzzle of women's empowerment. And my whole thing is about giving women voice. So I think along with giving women voice is giving women understanding of how to create a world where their voices are strong. And money is a big part of that. Wealth is very important to that. And I think every woman out there would like to know a little bit more about what to do, how to do, when to do, where to do wealth. But before we go there, I want you to share your personal story. How did you get to where you are now? It's just such a fascinating story. I think it'll make a difference for everyone listening.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I got to be honest with you. I've always loved finance. Like, I really didn't know that it was for so many kind of a taboo topic.
Yeah.
I started my career actually in investment banking and quickly went into private equity right out of college. I was very, very fortunate. And that was a time when, frankly, private equity looked so different than it does today. There were absolutely no women in private equity back then. I can tell you
Mm.
that. And as I began to also grow in my personal life, I got married, I began to have kids. That world became very challenging. And frankly, I had no mentors. I had no one to talk to.
I
I had no
bet.
one to say, I'm pregnant. I've got a 2-year-old at home. I'm dealing with all these pressures. How do I navigate all this? And one day, my amazing boss, the head of our fund, had asked me to get on a Cessna, a small plane, to go look at a deal in rural Alabama. And as many moms can appreciate, it was frightening, right? And I'm also pregnant. So it was kind of an aha moment of something's got to give. My husband at the time traveled 150 nights a year.
Wow.
Someone needed to be home. And, it's interesting. I really didn't think twice. And that in and of itself is kind of interesting when you unpack that. But I really felt this responsibility that I needed to make a really tough decision, and I quit.
Oh,
I left
really?
my career. I never intended to leave for as long as I did, but life happened, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I kind of laugh sometimes, reflect it, looking back. I think in some ways, one of the worst things, and obviously it wasn't his intent, but my boss at the time said was, "You'll always have a job here, Steph," because it gave me this false sense of security.
Right. Yes.
And, here, fast forward again, that decision was really the beginning of me leaning out of my entire financial life. I always say that nobody wakes up one day and says, "I think I'll lose my financial independence today," right? It just happens gradually over time. And losing my earning power was step one. But then ultimately, like I think so many women can appreciate, with the pressures at home, my husband and I began to divide and conquer. And despite my background, I eventually left all financial decisions to him.
Oh my goodness.
And, again, I loved money. It wasn't a matter of I didn't want to do it. It was a matter of not enough hours in the day. Um, so that worked until it didn't. Until one
Mm.
day I found myself literally on a park bench in Washington, D.C., no less.
Oh no.
Um, where, my husband shared that he was leaving, and he was in love with another woman, and I was suddenly facing divorce. And it was a real aha moment of, oh my gosh, like here
Now
I
what?
am. Now what? And that
Mhm.
was 14 years later. And I, at the time, had no idea what my financial situation looked like. I had not worked in 14 years, as I mentioned. So figuring out how to provide for my 3 boys and also to ensure that I had some financial security felt like one of the most overwhelming things I'd ever faced,
Mhm.
at a time where it was certainly, I was emotionally a wreck, right? So frankly, this really was a wake up call. And in my journey to rebuild was not easy by
I
any
bet.
stretch. And,
I bet
and
14 years?
yeah, Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody cared, right? Like what I may have been in private equity, but at the time we had fax, phone, and FedEx. We didn't even have email.
Oh my goodness, that's true. That's so true.
Yeah, so rebuilding was quite a challenge, but then also um like I said, just ensuring that I was starting to position myself to thrive financially, to protect my boys, to protect myself, and to build a future so that
Mm.
I had that financial independence again. But frankly, as I began to do it, I couldn't help but pause and think, if I'm struggling this hard with the background that I have, with the knowledge that I have, what is the average woman who's never been exposed to this, that didn't go to college for this, that didn't have a career in finance? What is she facing?
Good
And it
question.
and it just became this North Star, this guiding light of, this is what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. This is how this is
Mm,
why this happened. Frankly, it gave
mm,
purpose to one of the most, as you can imagine, just horrible times of my life, but it put purpose around it,
nice.
and really helped me see that, we have a problem out there, and women need to really lean into their agency around finance. And I wanted to help. And so that was really the beginning of this passion, this journey around the economic empowerment of women, and where I can play a really critical role, I hope, in helping women across the country really gain that confidence and see that if I can do it, they can too.
Well, they can, and that's one of the reasons why I have you on because of your passion. But I think it's also fundamental to a woman being empowered is to understand money, how to use it, how to wield the power of money, how to not be afraid of money. That's a mindset. That's a change. And there's one thing is balancing the checkbook. How many out there really do that? And I'm just saying. And or saving or getting a 401k. I mean, those seems like those are the basic things because wealth is a whole nother story. Wouldn't you
Yes.
agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the reality is that to do this well, you have to take a very large holistic approach and
Mm.
understand that you're right. The first step is changing your mindset, leaning into conversations about money, examining your behaviors with it
Yeah.
in the past, understanding why you're at where you are today. It's really the first step in unleashing the shame that some of us may
Ah,
feel, many of us may feel. In fact, I think, frankly, shame and embarrassment of what we don't know is probably one of the biggest things that holds women back when it comes to leaning into their financial power.
give me an
And so,
example.
I'm sorry.
Give me an example. I that hits the nail right on the head. Embarrassment
Yeah.
and shame.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a personal example. And again, I had a background in finance, right? And I
Yeah.
felt a tremendous amount of shame and embarrassment that,
Oh.
how could I have let myself get into this situation despite my background? But when I began to enter uncharted territory, and that really for me was um, an example of it, was when I began to look to advisors to help me
Mm.
and to build a team around, like, who is going to help me invest my money, like manage it. I entered a world that I wasn't familiar with, and people assumed, because I was in finance and I was in private equity, that I knew all this stuff. Well, the truth is in the world of money, it's like medicine, right? Where there's
Mm.
all different kinds of advisors,
Mhm.
there's all different kinds of doctors. A heart surgeon is very different than a podiatrist, right? And so recognizing that, and not, for me, that was, everybody made an assumption of I knew all this stuff. And so all this jargon started being thrown at
Love it.
me.
Love it.
Words, as I was interviewing them, throwing out acronyms,
Yes.
and CFA and RIA, and
I
here's
know.
fiduciary, and
I
we're custodian, and this, and this. And I just sat there, and they're like, of course you know this. And I felt so small,
mm.
because and that, to me, instead of speaking up and saying, wait, speak in a plain language, I'm smart, like, but talk to me. And I didn't. I kept small,
Talk to me
and
as
I
if I
didn't.
don't know.
Correct.
Educate
Correct.
me.
Correct.
That's really
And
good.
that's where, again, the shame creeps in and holds us
Mhm.
back from really taking that first step, which is, wait, how should I know this? I've never been exposed to it, just as maybe you've never been exposed to my world, whatever my career is. I mean, no one is an expert at everything. So I think that's a really a good example of just how that mindset and holding back can hold you back in other ways.
It's
And
interesting
a
because
lot
when
of
we
that.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No,
Well,
no,
it's
no.
interesting because when I first was looking at your bio, and I was, what does Northern Trust do? Their wealth management, financial plan, what are they? And I felt so silly because it's like, what's the difference between the two? And
Yeah,
this makes hits this point out of the park. This whole thing about the jargon, and there's probably financial planning and wealth, definitely wealth advisors and financial planners. And which one do I go through first? And what am I trying to accomplish with my money? What do I do with money in general?
right.
What a landmine that is.
Correct, correct. And the only way to really equip yourself with the tools that you need to
Mhm,
lean into that in that particular example, but frankly, in almost all aspects of how we navigate money, is to commit to financial literacy, to
mm,
to really understand that I only know what I know, and that's okay.
mhm.
The only shame, right, is shame is not knowing. Shame really is not doing something about it to better yourself to learn more,
Yeah.
quite frankly. And that's really a critical step, is leaning in and saying, I'm going to commit to this, whatever it takes. um and frankly, Denise, I got to tell you, I think for many of us, this concept of being financial independent,
Mm,
feeling financial security,
mhm.
reaching financial freedom can feel incredibly overwhelming,
It does.
right?
Yes.
And, depending on the type of resources that you have, and that's different for everyone, your needs, right? Because it doesn't matter what you have, it matters what your needs are, to make sure that you match what you have and have a plan around that. Um, but, you know, it can be very, very overwhelming and almost backfire into causing more shame. And so I like to kind of unpack in an empowering way what the real goal is around obtaining financial independence. And it isn't obtaining a certain amount in your balance, your bank account, or having to never work again.
Mm,
To
mhm.
me, it truly is. Financial independence is a commitment that you make to yourself, that you will do whatever it takes, right? And you will rely on not your spouse, not your parents, not your boss, not your partner, not your, you'll rely on yourself to do whatever it takes to equip yourself, whether it's going and learning, whether it's asking questions. But when you commit to that and say, I'm going to own my power, I'm going to own my financial independence, each step that you take towards that leads to the next best. I mean, suddenly you feel it's a process,
It's a
right? It doesn't
process.
happen overnight.
See that.
But I just think it's important to say, you know, it's not a dollar amount in a bit. It's a commitment, it's a mindset, to your
That's an
point.
interesting way to look at it. I mean, again, when was preparing for this conversation with you, at first I said, "Well, what does a voice have to do with it?" And I realized the voice in this circumstance has a lot to do with some of these things, the jargon, the shame, the embarrassment, all the things that you just talked about around money makes us quiet.
That's
It
right.
shuts us up. We don't
That's right.
speak. We don't ask for what we need, or we don't ask for an explanation. And to me, that's the biggest aha that I've had within the few minutes that we're together, is that
Mm,
I'm not asking for what I need, and I'm not asking for a clear picture of what that looks like to help me get to my commitment in my financial goal. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think the financial services industry, and I'm very proud, I've been here, you mentioned Northern now for almost 6 years. It's amazing.
Mm.
And I'm really proud of what we've built that is centered around solving for that, really creating a platform that is community, education, inspiration, to have these conversations, so the people that do feel small, do feel shame, begin to see you're not alone, right? You're not alone. And, statistically speaking, I think it's important to build context around this concept of um, feeling alone. And because no one talks about this, right? How many times do you go have happy hour with your girlfriends and say, you know what? I was wondering, so what's your mortgage relative to your income? I'm just curious if I've got the right structure. That may not create an invitation back to the next
That's
one, right?
probably true. We're more
So
talking about that first step of, "You know what? I didn't get that raise that I was supposed to
right,
get,"
right, right,
or,
right,
"I didn't
right,
get that client didn't sign up, and so
right.
now." Yeah,
Right. But we're
yeah.
not talking about the management aspect of it and starting to understand, how are we doing relative to, and so that requires conversations,
Mhm.
right, with advisors or others that, frankly, we need to surround ourselves with people that don't talk that jargon,
Right,
that
for
are
sure.
committing to the education, that don't make us small. So, yes, it's our responsibility to own the fact that we're holding ourselves back, but also I don't want to take away the responsibility that I think that the industry has to really understand and meet us where we're at, and really empower us to, because when they do and when we work together, the impact that we can have with our wealth, not only for ourselves, for our families, but for our communities,
'Cause I
is
can tell you feeling shame, I mean, I've sat with my financial planners, and boy, do I feel shame, 'cause on a lot of fronts, I'm late to the table according to the standard. That's an important thing for me to say here, because I'm sure there's
yeah.
a lot of women who are listening to this podcast that would say, "You know what? I've done all the basic stuff, but I'm late to the table on the wealth building
Mhm.
piece. Where do I start? I mean, how do I start? Or how do I just release the feeling of that I can't talk about it? I'm supposed to be so far much further ahead."
Right. Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to tell everyone out there, it's not too late. It's never too late, right? Yes, if you're 25, right, and you think about time is on your side,
Yes.
and when it comes to wealth building, in to me, I really break down what you need and the tools that you need to start thinking and building confidence around making strong financial decisions or confident financial decisions are really
Mhm.
centered around four basic concepts. And one is understanding opportunity cost. Yes to something always means no to something else,
Mm,
right? So,
mhm.
yes to spending, or yes to saying, you know what, I'm going to buy into this narrative that it's too late. So, I'm not going to change my behavior. What is that no to? No to change, no to start making your money work for you harder,
Right.
and unfortunately sitting back and letting more time go by, right, when you can't afford to do it. The second one, which to me is so powerful, is the concept of compounding. The reality is that compounding is all about, if you let money work for you, right,
Yeah.
and you put it to work in a wise way, and how you do that is a different conversation. We can unpack that a little bit too if you'd like. But if you do it, eventually your money earns money on money on money, and to a point of, to throw out kind of a rule of thumb, money can double every 10 years if you let it, at
No
say
way.
7%. Right. And so when you start to think about the earning power that money has, if you put it to work wisely through investments, you begin to see that a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old may not have the same time that a 25-year-old has for their wealth to grow. But frankly, many of us have more resources to put to work,
Now
right?
that's a good
Like they
point.
don't have, maybe they're saving $100 a month, right? Well, maybe we're in a position where we can save 500 or 600 or whatever the case may be. Well, that saved every single month adds up. It doesn't just turn into, 600 times 12. That money is earning on itself in the interest that how you're putting it to work. So again, I could go in and get real geeky with my math here, but I think what's important is that it is never too late, but it starts with really making that commitment, equipping yourself with the knowledge to begin to make wise financial decisions and to see what you're giving up
Mhm.
and the security that you are leaving on the table, so to speak, right?
Mm,
By not doing anything today.
mm.
The time is now.
The time is now, so
you
we
know,
start where you
I mean,
are.
and you don't, I think sometimes it can be overwhelming too. And that's why I tried to take the numbers out of it. To say, listen, your goal is not to have X number of dollars in the bank. Your goal is to start today shifting your thinking,
I just
right?
love that you make this approach, because listening to you, I'm thinking, oh my God, did I do the right thing with that? Did I do the right thing with that? Or maybe I should do this. And there's so much, but this compounding thing, you want to talk more about that? I wouldn't be mad.
I should actually pull up my numbers here for my. I'm in the process of finishing my book, and I've got all these numbers and the math and the tables.
Mhm.
But think about it this way. Um, I use this concept of weighing my choices and the opportunity cost and what money could do to me, could do for me, and combining that with compounding in my everyday decision making. So, an example would be, okay, should I pay cash for a car? I've got to buy a new car. I have an option. Interest rates are rising. We all know what's happening there. There's
Right.
still a couple of deals out there that you can get a lower interest rate loan. But think about it this way, we were living in a world not too long ago where you could essentially buy a car for 1% interest, maybe 2% interest.
That's so true.
And so
True.
the old standard of debt is bad. Don't use debt. Um, I say is wrong. And I'm going to tie this back to this conversation here. Follow me and stop me if you don't understand. But when you go to buy a car and you say, all right, I'm going to use easy numbers. All right. I've got $20,000 sitting in a savings account or an investment account. Let's say that.
Mhm.
Should I pull that out and use it so that I'm buying a depreciating asset? It's not a good investment. It's not going to grow in terms of value. Or should I borrow at say 1 or 2%? It depends totally on the interest rate, but let's just use that as an example because
Okay.
there still are some good deals. Well, most people don't know how to answer that, right? Like, how do you think, what would you do? What do you think?
Mhm. Mhm.
But if you begin to say, all right, how should I think about this differently to weigh the pros and cons so I can feel confident in my decision? I would say under this scenario, perhaps it depends on other factors, you shouldn't use cash.
Yeah.
Because if I can keep in mind during that same period where interest rates were so low, the average return for the S&P over, a 12-year period was like 12%. So if I can borrow at 2% and keep my money working for me at 12,
12%.
do you see how
Mhm.
indirectly I'm
Mhm.
making the spread with my
Mhm.
investments? I'm
Even these
letting my
high
money keep
yield
working for me.
yes,
And
even these high
and
yield savings accounts are
correct.
still a better deal.
Correct. Right now we're in a unique environment where, you know, you can invest to your point in a 4 or 5%, type of vehicle, essentially risk free.
Yeah.
Where it used to be, that would be a savings account earning nothing. So
True.
keeping your money in your typical savings account earning 0.8%, is that wise? Well, not if you can turn around and buy, or invest in something that has the same essential risk for 5.
Wow.
You're This is
Yeah.
all a way of thinking, right?
Yes, it
And
is.
starting to weigh the pros and cons. That goes into compounding because money grows if you let it, but that's the key. You got to let
Yeah.
it. And you got to know how to make the right decisions to know when to let it and when not to let it.
Mhm.
To try to simplify it.
To
Obviously,
simplify.
if I had a whiteboard, I could really map this out, but
Well, we gotta get you to come and do a workshop of some kind.
I'm
But
all
what's
for it.
number 3? What would number
Yeah.
3 be?
Number 3 in terms of,
You said there's
well,
4
yeah,
tools.
yeah. So number 3 is really understanding arbitrage, which I just illustrated. So number 1 is opportunity cost. Yes to something always means no to something else.
Mhm.
Buying that latte or grabbing, that extra couple things and throwing it in your cart at Target or whatever the case may be means you're inadvertently saying no to savings, right?
Mm.
Compounding is, again, represents the power that money has if you let it grow.
Mhm.
Arbitrage is another complicated, scary kind of sounding
I know
word.
it sounds scary.
Yeah, but I just frankly illustrated through that debt example and that investing of cash example, arbitrage, where you're seeing opportunities to maximize the amount of money that you're putting to work,
Mm. Mhm.
um, to take advantage of that compounding.
Mhm.
And then the fourth is understanding that you can't put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm,
diversification. And I'm not talking about diversification in your investments. That is a very, very critical and important component as you work to have a very balanced investment portfolio or 401k, depending on your age, your situation. There is no one size fits all. I'm talking about your entire balance sheet.
mm,
I'm talking about not having too much sitting in cash because then I'm not putting enough money to work for me, right? It's just sitting in cash. Not having too much of my wealth as I age tied up in my home because
mm,
what's the purpose? To put a roof over my head. Yes, it can appreciate, but I can't access or do anything with that unless I sell it, right? So it's identifying the proper mix of retirement assets, real assets, invest taxable investment accounts, having all cash, all of that proper mix, so that you have what I like to say a well-oiled machine working for you.
mm.
And again, there is no one size fits all.
That's true.
That's where you really have to know where you're at, what your goals are, what your earning power looks like, what is the time horizon and how you're working. That again is your goal. Are you looking to kind of turn off the income and start relying on your wealth to provide income? What again? It's a much more multifaceted conversation with yourself and ideally with advisors that can help position you to thrive.
But the
And so you're not
basic
making these
thing to
decisions on
do
instinct.
is begin to open up the way that you approach your money and to I love the idea, look for ways to make money work harder for you. I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah, don't waste that
Money,
time.
get out there and start working, would you?
Well, and I think we're living in and we to go back to the age, because I do think it is something that really does hold a lot of women back, particularly,
Mhm.
let's say they go through a major life event like divorce. Divorce,
Typical.
yeah, divorce was my catalyst, but there are
Mm,
other things like the loss of a spouse
that's
or
true.
a career change, the failure of a business, a medical crisis. Maybe you're suddenly thrown into becoming the sandwich generation and caring for aging parents. Well,
Mm.
and so things are changing, right? Um, I think and a lot of times that's happening later in life. And that's what becomes even scarier because that whole thing of I don't have enough time. We are living now in an age that where women are living longer than ever. It's super exciting, frankly. I think I think the average age of women today is in the early is call it 82. But
Wow, I didn't know
women
that.
who have any means, access to good health care, ability to live well, a healthy lifestyle, good
Mhm,
food,
mhm.
exercise, add
Exercise.
10 years onto that.
Yeah.
So the average age of women is of who have those means is 92.
Mm.
But frankly, experts are saying that we should be expecting a 400% increase in the number of people that live to be over 100 over the next 30 years, and 70% of them are women.
Wow,
So if you're in your
wow,
50s,
wow.
you may have decades left
Yeah,
of not only putting your wealth to work, but also to make sure you're positioned to thrive during those golden years,
yeah,
which is
thriving during the
why,
golden years sounds great to
right,
me.
right. But it takes action today. And it's one of the
Mhm.
things I love just building awareness around is you can't afford to wait, and there's a lot of things you can do right now. Um, as we've talked about, to take action and position yourself much better, to not only feel confident, but to actually begin to feel that security that, I am prepared.
I am prepared. You and I talked just briefly because a lot of this stems from this idea about closing the pay gap and being able to earn more. Because now that we're living longer, we certainly can sit on boards and bring in money longer or run our companies longer. I
Right.
mean, what do you say to all of that in terms of the pay gap and how has that changed in the last several years and how does it affect wealth?
Yeah. Well, I think in many cases, well, it affects wealth a lot because when you think about a lot of the reasons behind the pay gap,
Mhm.
and like me, I guess I'm a great example of that because I left my career and I had 14 years of losing that earning power of, just with that break. And a lot of women are faced with that, right? In fact, that's one of the number one things is leaving the workforce for whatever reason, having to get back in, or having to take even a job, a lower paying job, to meet the demands at home, to still have your foot in, but to maybe not travel as much, or maybe, to satisfy again the needs of your family. Um, but it isn't just the income lost, it's the wealth lost because you
Mhm.
have less in your retirement.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a really
Yeah.
big issue when you tie it
Yeah.
back to what we're talking about of wealth building, because you have less money to compound and grow. So, but one of the things that I'm seeing and I'm really excited about is this rise of female entrepreneurship, particularly later in life.
Oh,
You
wow.
know,
Tell me about that.
yeah, well, I mean, one of the biggest examples of it is the unbelievable Bobby Brown, who in her 60s started Jones Road, right? She is a shining example of it's never too late,
Yeah.
right? And that
Yeah.
we have to constantly be thinking big and challenging ourselves. Not everybody wants to, but many of us do. And yet we say, time's running out. I'm too old. That's for the young. No, it's not. So again, it goes to mindset. But we have seen a tremendous rise in female entrepreneurship. In fact, um, when you look at how many businesses there are today that have been founded by women, and you compare that
It's a
to,
lot.
say, 30, yeah, the 1970s,
Yeah.
it's a 3,000%, excuse me,
Yeah.
3,000%
It's a lot.
increase.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And
3,000.
so that's super exciting, because
Very
we
exciting.
tend to, as we get older and we begin to forge our own paths through our own entrepreneurship, we also have more control over our destiny,
It's true.
right?
I've been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years now, and it's interesting.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm at this place. It's funny that you would bring this piece to the puzzle up. I'm at this place in my own life where I'm constantly saying to myself, it's not too late, because I see a next level to what I've been doing. I mean, I've been teaching presentation skills and getting people ready for the media and handling
Love it.
crisis for 30 years. But there's
Love
some
it.
part of me that says, all right, my mission's not over yet.
Right.
I've got to do the next step.
Yep.
And what kind of wealth is going to come from that? Because I had a certain kind of wealth that came with this 30-year march. But now I have this enthusiasm, and I have to tell myself constantly, you're not too old. Because the standard out there says, oh, well, when you're 80, you need to fall out of, you need to fall out of the workplace and go do something else. It's interesting
You're
looking at that.
not. Yeah. And in fact, I'm going to, I'll challenge even more to think that in many ways, the superpower of aging, the superpower of where we are and thinking about what we want to do, we have knowledge and experience that our younger self didn't.
We sure
You know,
do.
we have taken risks, we have failed, we have built resiliency. We all hopefully also have a little bit more financial security behind us as well. We can't risk as much because again, if we lose, we don't have as much time to make it back. So we have to be methodical in our choices
That's a good point.
and really think about it.
Hmm.
But also, we have so much that we can offer ourselves to set us up for success because of that knowledge and experience gained from all of those years. And I don't think we think enough about that. I think
Hmm.
we think too much about what we don't have, and we don't, and it's particularly time, or oh my gosh, I want to go start this and I don't know anything about it and I'm too old to learn this. But we don't stop and think about what we do have and the skills that we've developed that in many ways will override some of the things that we're lacking and compensate for them. So again, it all goes back to mindset. And I
Hmm.
get it. I set a goal 12 years ago, 14 years ago, really, when all of my life fell apart, that I wanted to write a book. And I really was like, I've never written a book before.
And
Like,
here
I don't
you
know how to
are.
do that.
And here you are.
Like, but but it's never too late, and there's no limits. And I think I'm in this interesting place like you are. I'm about to accomplish that goal, but it's like, okay, then what?
And then what?
In so many ways, I feel like I'm just beginning. And
Yeah.
I think we need to be out talking about that to empower each other and our peers and our friends and our and other folks our age, and get us talking and inspire each other, because when we do, I think magic happens.
I
We
think
need a
magic
community.
happens. I love
Yeah, we
that.
need a community
We
to
need a
keep us,
community.
and we need to throw our intentions to the world and hold each other accountable and
I
lift each
love
other
that.
up when we get that horrible thing called self-doubt that creeps in. We've all had it. And if you haven't,
Are you kidding me?
wow.
Are you serious here? Doubt? Me? Doubt? Yeah, it's those 3 a.m. wake ups of, oh my God, what am I doing in my life? You know, what is life doing to me?
Well, it's normal.
Yeah.
And I think in so many ways, I've come to really embrace self-doubt and imposter syndrome because, if I didn't have it, then I'm not thinking big enough.
Hmm.
If we're not just a little scared, we're not thinking big enough,
Yeah.
right? We're
You know, I've
living in
heard
our
that.
comfort zone,
I've heard that.
you
You're
know,
in the comfort
whether
zone.
it's stretching to find new ways to earn money, whether it's stretching to expand our financial literacy, to better understand something and go, ooh, this feels really, really, really icky and scary. It's better to just shove it away. That little ickiness inside, I think, is a really good thing. I
It is.
think I think we should be leaning into that more than we should be shying away from it because it's really the important element to change.
It's an important element to change, and it's a part of life. It's natural. I tell people all the time, oh, I'm so scared to get up on the stage and speak. Well, that fear is what's going to make you excel. Most athletes use that energy. It's just
That's
energy.
right.
You have to channel it through a skill set. And what you're saying here, which I've never thought about, so I'm thanking you in advance, is that I can channel my concerns about money, my thoughts about money into skill sets. These are all skill sets that you just tools. You call them tools. I see them as skill sets.
Yeah.
You know, these are the things that I can use to help me understand better how to leverage my money and really become wildly wealthy,
Right.
even if I have 20 years or 30 years to do it in. That's pretty incredible.
Well, and you started it with the conversation. It all comes back to shifting your thinking and leaning into that and embracing it. And
Yeah.
and also setting realistic expectations. It does take time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's working a new muscle,
It's working a new muscle. I
and it's
love it.
leaning into that little bit of ickiness and the pain that when you start to work a new muscle, you always feel.
Yeah.
But one by one, as you see the results of your actions and you see the progress that you're making, it really is what can continue to propel you further. And you'll be shocked to see where you will be in 5 years.
It's
You
almost like
know,
looking at a mansion and seeing all the different rooms in the mansion. I mean, it's looking at your financial picture and seeing which, okay, here are all the rooms and being able to understand what you have in each room and how each room
works
contributes.
together.
Yay! Isn't that a great example? I love that
Yeah,
example.
that is. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what happened to brilliant minds get together. I have to share this funny little story because I was laughing about it again when I was preparing for this, and it's always fun to tell a personal story, and then I'll have you tell a personal story around money. So I my family, when I was young, we would love to play Monopoly. And there's a lot of families out there, I'm sure, who play Monopoly. And but my brother, sister, and my father, believe it or not, were so competitive. You had to really have your stuff together to sit there and play Monopoly. Here I am on the floor, and they're sitting there, and you're going past go, and you're buying up all this property. And I'm not that old. I'm probably maybe 12, 13. I'm not sure. But anyway, we play this game and you get 1,500. So you get three $500 bills in the beginning. I think something like that, or two. I don't remember. But anyway, I would take one of those $500 bills and stuff it in my shoe and then put my shoe back on. And then we play the game and, I'd buy some property, but I was always a little bit, so when we go past go and you get that $200 that you get, change that $200 with something else that I had and come up with another $500 bill, but I would stuff that one in my shoe. So at the end of the game, everybody would have all this property and stuff, but I had a
You
pile
had
of money.
cash.
So, I mean, I had properties too, but they thought that I was cheating, and all I was really doing was just stuffing the
Saving.
little money
Yeah.
and putting it in
Yeah.
my shoe.
Yeah,
So
well,
I
it's
just love that
really
idea.
yeah, well, it's really interesting that you're saying that because unpack that a little bit. And
Mhm,
what you were doing is
mhm,
and again, this may not be the case, but in listening to you and combining that with a lot of the work I do and what I see, and I love unpacking the psychology of money. I just love it because it's think about why you were doing that. Here you are watching a really competitive situation where
mhm.
you might not feel like I can win the way they are playing, so to speak.
Yes.
It's triggering this. I'm going to do it in a way that makes me feel comfortable. And that's saving, right? And
Mhm.
so, that your action was the result of that experience. And honestly, that is so much the root of our relationship with money.
Yeah.
Frankly, and we either do, I'll share a story on this topic is we either do what we see growing up with the money messages that we receive, or we go completely the opposite way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we're thrown money messages throughout our lives. But when we receive them as a young child, they leave an imprint.
Mhm.
They really make and that imprint, the truth behind it may be right or false or true. It doesn't matter. It's your perception. And you respond to it. You develop habits around it. My dad was a big spender, frankly. And I thought like we lived in a nice home. I thought what we had, like we had security. Well,
Mm.
in reality, I watched, I, I, I watched, I mean, I hope my mom doesn't mind me telling the story, but oh well,
Oh, well, mom,
and
sorry.
it's in my book, so it's okay. But I watched very stressful times when, here I thought we had financial security, but we didn't at all. In fact, my dad had won a hole in one at a golf tournament and won a car, and he had to immediately sell it to pay our taxes. And that was that paralyzed me, quite frankly, and it instilled this fear of money is scarce. This constant need. You can't spend, you have to save. Because again, I watched him spend, but when I saw that fear, the scarcity that came because
Mhm.
as a result, I went the opposite direction.
Mm.
I became so frugal to the point that I was petrified. I mean, do you see the
Yeah,
example
I
of
can see it. I
how
can
we're,
see it.
and unless you unpack the why behind it, it's any behaviors that are holding you back are not going to change.
Wow.
So it
That's
can be as
such a good
innocent as a game, like that's or it can be as profound as, a life altering event. Um, that leaves this imprint, but it really does dictate. And so often how we think about money, our behaviors, why many of us are avoiding talking about it. Why we're, either I call them penny pinchers or spenders,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
in using money as a form of therapy, of retail therapy. So,
Yeah.
again, I don't mean to get too
Well,
off track,
no,
but
I bet you there's tons of women who are listening right now, and maybe they've brought spouses or partners onto the call as well or sent it to them. I bet you they're out there looking at their own story. And
you
that's what we
have to.
want. We want you to look at your own story. I mean, mine was the Monopoly story. Hers was her dad's hole in one.
Right.
All of
Well,
us
and
have some story.
right, and to be honest, like the whole culmination of all of our experience with money as we grow up, really form our own personal money story,
Mm,
right? So we have individual stories or experiences, but when you combine them all, it really becomes our money story, our own individual. And so to create that and build awareness around what that is, and to really look at it and see, what do I like about this? What do I don't like about this? What do I
yeah.
want to change? Maybe there isn't anything you change. Maybe you feel like you've a great relationship with money, but building awareness around it, really is a critical component. And then also you mentioned spouses and partners and all of that. I love that you did that because I'm often asked, how do we have better conversations around money within our family? And I
Mm,
I say, well, just as you have a money story, your partner has a money story. You grew up
mhm,
differently.
mhm.
So you got to not only unpack your why, you got to be open to really understanding their why too.
Wow.
And then understanding, oh, so that's why you're triggered if I say, talk about money in this way. Or, I get it. This,
Yeah.
it just opens up an awareness that can be beneficial not only to yourself, but also to your partnership and your family. So it's just recognizing that we all have it. And
I'll
let's,
have
to
it.
your point, use our voices to not only talk to ourselves and have a voice within, but really encourage that conversation and using our voices with each other and our families and frankly our communities.
Well, you know what? We couldn't end on a better note
Well, good.
because we do. And when you're saying being able to use our voices to ask the hard questions, to change your own mindset and get out of
Yeah.
your own way and look at the things that trigger you and the ways that money has created behavior since a very young age is a lot. It is a lot. We get it, but we know that you're out there dealing with this inside your life. So let's just do this. I love the idea of one of the big things that I really want to begin to have happen or to bring more people together, women together like you, Steph, where we do summits and we start to do community and we have the ability to support each other in making these transitions because it is financial freedom is a lot to do with the mindset and you've been saying that since we popped on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's really, really important to think about ways to build community. So from our side, we're going to say a few things about what we're going to be doing. But I also would love to couple with you and to partner with you and to see if we can create some kind of summit, some kind of way that we can get some training out there on a regular basis
Yep.
and build community around that so that it's
Absolutely.
ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love that, and we are doing that through our Elevating Women platform,
I
which is
love that.
all about the mission of economic empowerment. And like I said, it's all about education, but
Yeah.
inspiring, right? We want to see those success stories, but we also want to hear the challenges so we don't feel alone. And then to your point, have that community to talk and share and grow. And then frankly, unleash more ideas of things we want to learn about.
Very
We talked a
important.
lot about mindset today. That is a starting point. But as you begin to go and learn more and more about investing or, estate planning or all the different facets of wealth, it's a it's a process, but that community and that strong commitment to education is what really continues to build that foundation and helps us all maximize the impact that our wealth can have.
So
So I'm
good.
all for it.
Me
I
too.
love it. And
Me too.
it really does. Every time I talk about this, every time, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, because it does make me smile and know that all those years ago, when I was on the floor crying, thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? How am
Yeah.
I ever going to feel financially secure again? It was really, here we are, and it just gives it purpose. So thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for
I'm so
letting me share that, and also to deliver some of the work that I do.
happy to do this. Very, very happy. I've gotten a lot out of myself, and so I'm sure that there are plenty of people that follow both of us that will love it, and I'm excited. Is there any website or anything you want us to go to, or where can we see you next, or when is the book coming out? Tell us
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Give us
Well,
something to do.
I'd invite everyone to please check out, and you can just simply Google Northern Trust Elevating Women. It's a platform that you'll see a lot of the work that we're doing with some incredibly amazing, talented women, but also delivering real education and insights and resources and whatnot. So that's one. Thank you for mentioning. The book is called Fly,
I
A
love it.
Woman's Guide to Financial Freedom and Building a Life You Love. And it is all about, the fly is about starting to play it big,
I
right? Not
love
staying
that. I
small,
love the
dreaming
title,
big.
Fly, A
Thank
Woman's
you.
Guide to
And
Financial Freedom.
yeah, and it comes out November next fall, so November 11th, 2025. So
Yeah.
super excited and very blessed to have the opportunity to share my story. But it is a lot of it's a self-help book where I get pretty raw about my story and how I got into this mess. But most importantly, it's the 7 steps of rebuilding and really gaining that financial freedom and building the life you love. So um, yeah, thank you. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome, and you're very, very welcome, and we also are gonna challenge our listeners to stay in community with us, but we're going to add that after you and I finish talking.
All right.
I am so happy, Steph, that you're here. We bumped into in a club that we both belong to. It's a women's club, by the way. It's a
Yep.
place for us to be together, and it's so cool. And we started this conversation, and I was intrigued and overjoyed at that time, and I'm even more intrigued and overjoyed at this time. So thank you so
W-
much.
Well, you're welcome, and I look forward to collaborating and doing some more great things together to bring these insights to a broader audience as well. So
Me
we'll
too.
talk more about that.
We'll talk more about that, and we'll talk more about all the wonderful things that we're going to do in order to make that happen.